Bombshell tonight in the Nolan Wells investigation. A mystery altercation emerges. And not with the guys that took him to the island on the boat. Does this change things? We cannot ignore it.
They should be using those videos to conduct further investigation.
There is a group of people fighting at 5 p.m. Who are they? Where was he? He wasn't floating in the water. He wasn't on the shore. Tonight, evidence of a so-called mystery altercation is emerging. Straight out to Crime Stories investigative reporter Dave Mack. Dave, what can you tell me first about this so-called mystery altercation? And this is not with the men that went to Horn Island on the boat. You know what? Let me just be clear. Crime Stories is not a symposium, a gathering place for a witch hunt. We want the truth about what happened to Nolan Wells. We are here to convict no one yet. And if evidence of a mystery altercation with other young men arises, we are pursuing it. Dave Mack, what do we know about some mystery altercation? We think after the Triton left Horn Island.
There is a brand new narrative spreading about how Nolan Wells died on Horn Island, and it is all centered on a fight that allegedly happened at 5 p.m. You are about to hear the full details straight from a reliable source, but after that, we're going to expose exactly why the true crime community is not buying it and why this whole angle may be a calculated distraction. Before we go on, if you are here because you believe Nolan deserves real answers and real accountability, hit that like button right now and subscribe.
Dave Mack, what do we know about some mystery altercation? We think after the Triton left Horn Island.
Nancy, this is a mystery altercation that is being described through social media as something that took place around 5 p.m. that day. This is 30 minutes after the Triton already left. And in this particular account, a Bertram boat was seen leaving shortly afterward at a high rate of speed. Now, this social media conversation claims that a person, one of the passengers, pretty certain Nolan Wells, was part of a group that was, quote, almost fighting around 5 p.m.
Bip, 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 bip. Whoa, wait. Hold on, Nellie. Did you say 5 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I jumped in, Dave Mack, is because 5 p.m., if Nolan was seen in an altercation at 5 p.m. on Horn Island, that's after the Triton, had already left. Let's see the boat, control room. We're talking about the boat leaving Horn Island. That boat. Had that boat already left when this altercation occurred? Dave Mack, that's a yes, no.
Yes.
Listen.
But the person said in the DM to another kid that is associated, not any of the kids that I interviewed or talked to, but that could be associated to some degree, that knew Nolan, that this person wrote a message saying, me and my husband saw you arguing with Nolan, and to the effect of you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Nolan and another person that he may have been in an argument with, to me, are people that need to be investigated.
Guys, let me first introduce Cheryl McCollum, Colgate's Investigative Research Institute founder. Let that sink in at coldcasecrimes.org. She's a star of a hit podcast that I have listened to on loop, by the way, Cheryl McCollum. And I don't like much of what you're saying, yet I keep listening. Zone 7, she's author of a brand new book, Swans Don't Swim in a Sewer, solving the cold case of the Flint River killer's daughter, and more. But for my purposes tonight, she's a forensics expert. Greg Morse, before I even get to the merits of this, where I meant to go with this is everyone has been focusing on the young men that were on the boat that took him to Horn Island. Then we get this audio that we're trying to corroborate, where seemingly in the background you hear them talking about trying to revive Nolan Wells on the boat. Is that even real? We don't know yet. Or has it been doctored? Trying to find out. I've got experts telling me, renowned experts, by the way, it's real, and renowned experts saying it's not real. It's just like a trial, right? Where it's expert v. expert, who's telling the truth.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about this mystery altercation. If it happened at 5 p.m., that boat was already gone. Now,
Well,
as
you're
much
right.
as some people want to hang the young guys on the boat, I want to make sure we hang the right person. If there is a mystery altercation after that boat lift, we need to be investigating that altercation.
Well, you're 100% right, because the three young men that are, at least the people are saying are involved in this, that went there with Nolan Wells, there's a specific timeline
Put
from what
him
I
up.
read.
Put him
They
up.
needed assistance on their boat. They left at 4:30.
You
They had
just
called
gave me
CTO.
a chill
So
down my spine.
if
You
so,
can't
if there
introduce
is
something because people say, I don't care what people say on either side.
No.
They mean nothing
Yeah,
to me. What?
Nancy, that's the problem when we have things like podcasts today and people who are not qualified to talk about serious things like this. They're not experts. They want to get likes. Law enforcement is going to keep information
He
close to the
said
vest.
he saw the DMs. I don't have
Okay,
a
so what does that
reason
mean? That-
to
that's-
think
that's
he
not
didn't
legitimate.
see the DMs. Now,
See?
many people are arguing that he has taken a side. We have not taken a side. I'm on the side of finding out why everybody got back to the mainland except Nolan Wells.
Well,
And
listen,
nobody
these
saw
are
anything.
teenagers.
Nobody knows anything. It's just like Tupac Shakur got shot on the strip
Nancy,
at Vegas,
these are-
and we still
the-
don't know what happened. Nobody saw a thing. That's BS.
These are
What?
young men hanging out. It's not unusual one may stay behind to hang out with other people. None of that is unusual for teenagers partying and having a good time. So that fact alone doesn't
Morse.
mean anything. What?
Where's your cell phone? Where is
The-
your cell phone? And try not to lie. Where's your cell phone?
Okay. Right here.
Oh, really? Because here's mine. So you want to tell me Nolan Wells stayed behind and his cell phone went without him? I understand. Don't everybody start screaming that he didn't want to get it wet. Of course he didn't want to get it wet. But there's ways around that. You can go put it on shore in your shoe like everybody else does to hide it from people, and then retrieve it when you go. But no, he let the boat leave with his phone. I agree with his mother on that. That is not Nolan Wells. He was never away from his phone.
So that doesn't mean anything in of itself with what's coming out about this. You know, you're talking about him staying behind. You're talking about there's evidence that he was there after 4:30 p.m. If he's there after 4:30 p.m., Nolan Wells on that island hanging out with other people, that's it. The fact that a cell phone is on a boat and he's not as a teenager doesn't really mean anything at all.
Okay, you know what? I asked you about a mystery altercation, and should we be looking in that direction right now? And you're like going on and on about the cell phone.
No, but
and everybody
that's
that
my
owns
point.
a cell phone, which is everyone,
but
knows you never
Nancy,
leave
that's
without
my
your cell
point.
phone.
You have to look at what really happened. If there was this mystery altercation, then yes, the police need to be investigating that.
Take it for what it's worth. Try to get the truth out of what we're hearing. Okay? Listen.
Nolan and another person that he may have been in an argument with, to me, are people that need to be investigated.
With that, I agree with Tatum. As much as we disagree on practically everything else, if this happened, and forget about the girl, I'm talking about the altercation. Cheryl McCollum, come on. He dies. Nobody sees him. The others get back safely. Now we're hearing about an altercation afterwards. And I'm not ruling out that he was on that boat when they left. But now I'm hearing about an altercation. When you can't tell the truth of what's happening, look at who was angry. Look if there was an altercation. I don't know what happened, but when I hear altercation after the Triton left, I've got to go there.
You got to look at it. You absolutely cannot ignore it. But one thing we already know from the second autopsy, they would have mentioned if he had any type of injury to his knuckles, if he had been in a fight. We didn't hear anything about abrasions or bruising or any type of injury that would be indicative of somebody that is a college football player fighting somebody.
Okay, now I have just told everybody that you're a forensic expert. It's starting to taste like a dirt sandwich. Because, okay, I'm going to let you sit in the corner and think about what you just said. Joe Scott Morgan is joining me, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon, star of a hit series, Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. He is a death investigator with over 10,000 death scenes under his belt, deaths of all genre. Joe Scott Morgan, let's refresh Cheryl McCollum's recollection. That's what you say in court when obviously the witness is gone off the rails. Your Honor, pause, Your Honor, objection. May I refresh the witness's recollection? In other words, get it together. Don't you remember what we just talked about before you got on the stand and you give them a piece of paper and go, can we see that, the drawings on the autopsy control room? Joe Scott, there's a big, thank you. There's a big honking mark, subcutaneous, deep reddening tissue on his occipital. If I hit somebody in the back of the head, it'd be right there. And we don't know what that is.
No, we don't. But to Cheryl's point, she's accurate. And here's why. Because in forensics, it's not just about positive findings. It's also about negative findings, those things that we are absent. So in that report, as she had mentioned, there was no indication that there was any kind of contusions on the hand, the arm, no kind of defensive event like a parry with a forearm, scuffing of the knuckles, that sort of thing. This forensic pathologist that did the second assessment didn't see any evidence of that. And so that's the first place I'm going to go to, aside from not having the actual primary autopsy report that has not been released yet. But you've got an individual that has, in fact, been retained by the family that's making this assessment. And it's a pretty damn thorough assessment, as a matter of fact, based upon many of them that I've read over the years. You don't see any kind of insults to the arms, the hands, anything like this. The one thing about that thing in the back, this focal area that they're talking about is, and I come back to this all the time, Nancy, is that his body, Nolan's body, is in such a state of decomposition to this point that he cannot make a definitive assessment on that area. And he did a multi-layered dissection, which, by the way, according to him, had not been done by the state medical examiner's office in Mississippi. He just went about it a different way. And as a matter of fact, if you like that one, I got another one. The examination that this physician in D.C. did on Nolan's remains ranks right up there with the most thorough, hear me talking, the most thorough dissection that you can possibly do on human remains. It's the same one that we do on bodies that have died, individuals that have died that have been incarcerated, in custody deaths. You know what all that means: in the back of a cruiser, in a holding cell, in a prison. Those autopsies rank right up there with the most thorough that we can go. It's a very deep dive that they did on his body.
Pay close attention to what just happened there. The moment Nancy pivots to this 5 p.m. fight, the entire panel stops asking about the Triton, about the sea tow call, about the timeline on that boat. All of that, gone. The conversation is now on a Bertram boat, a DM, and a mystery group of people nobody can name. Now, watch how the experts begin walking back each other's certainty. And right in the middle of that, a new layer lands. A witness who allegedly saw Nolan struggling in the water with a girl. Note how quickly these claims appear, and just as quickly how none of them can be confirmed.
Joe Scott, you are stating that due to the level of decomposition in Nolan Wells' body, that you can't really figure out why his occipital bone area had deep reddening, and that was seen nowhere else in the body. That's because of decomposition. Isn't that true?
Well, it's true in the sense that that's what
Didn't
the
you just say
physician
that?
said. I'm repeating what the physician said in his autopsy report. I didn't do the
So
examination.
then that would be a yes. So at that level of decomp
Yeah.
that you're claiming could obscure
claiming.
the nature of the deep reddening on
Yeah.
his occipital area,
Yeah.
but yet on the other side of your mouth, you're claiming that even with this intense decomposition, you didn't see evidence of any reddening on his knuckles or any indication of a fight. So you want it two ways. You want to say, decomp, can't tell what that was on the back of his head, but even though he's highly decomposed, I can tell you, he didn't have any reddening on his knuckles. Really?
No.
Because I
Do you
see a
know?
problem with that.
Okay, you've skinned your knee before, right? Okay. If you have an abrasion, that's completely different than a contusion. That means you have scraping and the tearing away of the skin. That's something that's very obvious. And guess what? I've been in enough fist fights in my life
I
that
said
I know
reddening.
what scraping. Right, I know, and you're misstating that because it's not a matter of reddening. When we look at hands, we also look at contact points where people are being abraded as a result of scuffing their hands. That's different than a color discoloration. We're talking about the top layer, the epidermis down to the dermis is being scraped away. He doesn't see any evidence of that in his
I'm not
autopsy
talking
report.
about a scrape. I'm talking about if he had, for instance, reddening from a welt, the beginnings of a bruise. With that level of decomp, you're telling me you could still make that out?
No, those two things cannot exist in the same universe. You have to have an abraded area, and there would be multiple of them on his hands if he is punching or trying to defend himself. And yes, we can make out bruises. Yeah, we can make out bruises
You
and
don't always have to have
decomposing
scrapes on
body.
your hand when you throw a punch. You don't always have to have cuts on your hand when you throw a punch. That's not true.
Well, that sounds mighty convenient if that's the road you want to go down, because I've seen them many
That's what I'm
times.
telling you. What you're saying is mighty darn convenient. That the reddening on the back of his head, can't really tell anything because he's so decomposed, but you can see his hands well enough to know he was not in a fist fight. Yeah,
Right.
that's convenient, Joe Scott.
he
Look,
was not in
I'm
a
not
fist
trying
fight.
to convict anybody. I'm trying to find the truth. I'm trying to find out if this evidence of an altercation really happened. And to further muddy the waters, now we have more witnesses stating what they saw.
Another report came to me of someone saying that they saw Nolan with a girl, and they believe that they saw Nolan and this girl struggling in the water. Not necessarily drowning, but struggling. Like it was obvious enough that the person was concerned when they saw Nolan in the water, and he was with this girl.
You know, that's from Officer Tatum's show. Cheryl McCollum, it seems to me that that's not true. Because don't you think if a witness saw one or two people, quote, struggling in the water, I mean, I would try to help them.
It makes no sense.
And they
that
did
wouldn't
nothing?
be yeah, it doesn't make any sense. That wouldn't be their focal, that they would pay attention to those two people that are struggling to see, is one going under and not resurfacing? What can we do to help? The idea that they would watch that, see a struggle, and then what? Turn back and finish barbecuing? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Not at all. So this is a problem, Greg Morse. You're a veteran trial lawyer. We're getting so much information, and a lot of it is inconsistent. And that is why you have cross-examination. so you can test the evidence. Test whether it's true under the fire of cross-exam. When you have conflicting stories like this, my instinct is to go with the one that makes the most sense. What do you make of these claims that Nolan was struggling in the water? I really believe if he had been, quote, struggling in the water, that either she or her friends would have come forward by now. I mean, what about these guys on the boat that had already left? Don't they want to save them? I mean,
Well,
I'm just trying to find out what happened to Nolan. And if this is true, it may place him on the island after they left.
Well, that's it, and that's what the police are doing. Is they're going to run these leads down, and they're going to try to verify what's credible and what's not before they go to a grand jury. They're going to exclude information that they think is completely uncredible. However, all of this information, if people are arrested at some point in the future and charged with a crime for Nolan Wells' death, then all of these conflicting stories, all of these different timelines, they become a conflict in the evidence. And as you know, Nancy, there's 3 ways a jury can find reasonable doubt if this ever gets there. And one of those ways is in a conflict in the evidence. So these are all favorable things that would benefit a defendant or defendants down the road. However, there's a reason why law enforcement does investigations. Professionals do it, not podcasters talking about it. Verified sources, all of that is nonsense. The police are going to keep information to themselves. They're going to also keep information private so they can test statements that come from people and verify what they're saying based on factors that don't get released in the media. So clearly something happened after 4:30 when the Triton boat apparently left. And all of these things the police will find, they will discover. You know, the police can discover whose phones were active at the time in that whole area if they choose. May not be able to use it in court anymore after the recent Supreme Court decision a few weeks ago on cell site location information. However, it's an investigative tool that they can line up who's there. They can also line these things up by the boats, right? And they're calling CETO and things like that. So these are all things the police are going to verify and shake out what they believe led to this young man's death.
I can get the GPS, Morse. I can get the GPS. Yep. I can get the cell phone data. I can get the tracking data. I can tell exactly what time the boat left. But I can tell the truth of that. But I can't tell the truth right now about these conflicting reports. Was he on the boat? His phone was on the boat. That's the whole point. He's traveling with his phone, then he's on the boat. They're saying, no, he wasn't on the boat. Now this altercation has arisen, evidence of that emerging after the boat left. Who's telling the truth? The mom, his mom says, no way would he have let the boat leave without his phone. Okay, that said, the mom is getting death threats. Nolan Wells' mother dealing with not only her son is gone, he's dead. The investigation going on. Now she's getting threats. Isn't it true, Susan Hendricks joining us, investigative journalist, author of Down the Hill, My Descent into the Double Murder in Delphi, that someone actually called for an investigation into Nolan Wells' mother? Isn't she a home health care nurse?
She is, and it was an anonymous call saying that she needed to be investigated. To me, it was outright backlash connected to what happened to her son. It's despicable considering everything she's already going through. Anonymous calls to say that she's not up to par and needs to be investigated. It's sickening.
Now that you've heard the full Nancy Grace breakdown, and I mean every angle, every expert, every claim she threw at the wall, I want us to step back and do something that broadcast didn't do. I want to look at what is actually verified and what is not. Because here is where the true crime community and the mainstream media are operating in completely different realities. The mystery altercation narrative, the 5 p.m. fight, the Bertram boat, the phantom group of men is built almost entirely on social media DMs and unverified accounts circulating online. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has not confirmed that any altercation occurred on that island. That is not a small detail. That is the single most important fact in this entire angle, and national television barely mentioned it. Now, the Bertram boat, the one supposedly seen leaving at a high speed right after the alleged fight. The owner of that boat has cooperated with law enforcement. Their vessel was inspected. There is zero verified evidence connecting that boat or its passengers to Nolan Wells. But it doesn't matter, because by the time the facts are out, the narrative has already done its job. The public is hunting a phantom, and the CETO call is no longer the headline. Let's talk about that audio, because that is what your community has been locked on. The CETO call was released July 26th by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. It captures the boat at approximately 4 p.m., a teenager calling for help because the bilge pump had stopped and the boat was taking on water. In the background, there is commotion, voices, panic.
We're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking.
TMZ released what they claimed was an enhanced version, and they suggested listeners could hear, "Is he dead?" and "Check his chest," and "Wake up." That version spread everywhere. Digital forensics expert Robert Freed, who appeared on News Nation specifically to analyze this, said the TMZ version was 20 seconds longer than the official MDMR recording and had a completely different digital fingerprint. He could not verify the phrases TMZ claimed were there. And he went further. He explained something that audiologists call auditory pareidolia. He is working with the claim that when you are told what to listen for before you hear an ambiguous sound, your brain will start to hear exactly that. The expectation shapes the perception. Freed said he experienced it himself during his own analysis. That is not a defense of anyone. But is this really what is playing here?
I want to go to Robert Freed, digital forensics expert who spent more than 2 decades analyzing electronic evidence. He's the executive vice president of forensics and chief investigative officer at Page One. He's trained law enforcement agencies across the country in digital forensics and computer crime investigations. Thanks for taking the time. I want to take this step by step. Absolutely. So first of all, you analyzed both versions. What were you able or not able to determine?
Well, you can obviously look at just the totality of both versions and see that there's a time difference right away. One's 8.5 minutes, the other one's 8 minutes and 50 seconds. And what we actually did was we extracted or preserved the videos from the specific websites, the TMZ as well as the WAFB website. And then what we were able to do there is take a digital fingerprint MD5 hash value of those two videos. They were obviously different, which means that they have different content. And then, we went in and we looked at the transcript that was able to be gleaned from both versions. And
so now this goes to the main question. In those transcripts, from your analysis, does anyone say, "Is he dead? Check his chest. Nolan, wake up"? Anything like that?
No. It's very distorted. Even if you hear it from the original to even the audio enhancement, it's still very difficult for some of the software that we use to even pick up those types of words. And there was nothing like that close to it in the transcriptions that we saw.
Is there a danger in someone telling you what to listen for? Do you go in with the preconceived, I don't know if the word is biased, but you're going in to look for those words and maybe you're hearing things that your mind is telling you that's what it is when it's really not?
Absolutely. When I first heard about some of the words that were apparently heard, my mind was automatically going to that as well. Am I going to hear those? things like that. So my perception is, okay, let me hear what everybody's talking about, and let's go down to, the specifics of it from a forensic analysis perspective. Can I actually transcribe those specific words as well from what's being provided to me?
So what do you think law enforcement's doing with this audio? If you were part of the investigation, what would you do with this audio now?
I would want to go and make sure that I have the data from the original source. What generated this audio recording? Let me go to the source. Because if I'm looking at different variations, you can even see, Jesse, that there's redactions in those audio recordings. There's account numbers that were shared. There were phone numbers. All that stuff is different than the original. I want to see the original, and I want to look at the metadata of the original.
So in other words, just real quick, if somebody said their phone number, there could be something in the background that could be interesting. Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Robert Fried, thanks so much.
Tell me what you heard in that audio clip in the comment section. If you have been here from the beginning, you already knew something felt off about this narrative. My team and I have been tracking every verified development in this case, and we are going to keep going until there are real answers for Nolan's family. If this channel has been giving you the accurate, research-backed coverage you can't find on cable TV, hit subscribe right now and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Now, back to the timeline, because the real legal action in this case is happening somewhere television isn't pointing the camera. While national media is chasing a fight that law enforcement has not confirmed, the real legal moves are happening in Mississippi State Chancery Court. On July 28th, Mississippi attorney Gary Bufkin, working with Ben Crump's team, filed civil subpoenas targeting the tech companies that may hold the answers no one on the island is giving up. They are going after Meta, that means Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, Snapchat, TikTok, and Life360, the GPS tracking app the Wells family used to monitor Nolan's phone. Those subpoenas seek everything: messages, photos, videos, login histories, IP addresses, GPS location data, timestamps. Each company has 21 days from receipt to hand it over. Why does that matter? Because Christine Wansley said that when Nolan's phone was returned to the family, both of his Snapchat accounts were completely empty. No photos, no videos, from a kid who documented everything. And when she compared the Life360 location history to what Snapchat showed, the data did not line up. Those subpoenas aren't going after rumors, they are going after the cloud, the version of that day that no one can delete twice. And while that is happening, on the other side of this case, Bart Edmonston Jr., a University of Wyoming punter who was on Horn Island that day, has retained attorney Russell Latino to pursue defamation claims against independent content creators who he says made false accusations against him. A cease and desist was served to New Orleans-based social media creator Kimber Lee on July 29th. Latino said the family has also hired a private investigative firm, and they have made clear this is just the beginning. Here is where that gets complicated for this community. Independent creators are the ones who surfaced the Sea Tao call, who tracked the GPS inconsistencies, who kept this story alive when local law enforcement was calling it a likely accidental drowning with no foul play, hours after the body was found. Now some of those same creators are being targeted with legal threats. Whether those lawsuits have merit depends entirely on what those creators said and whether they framed claims as facts or allegations. But the timing, defamation threats arriving while Crump's team is simultaneously subpoenaing tech companies, tells you everything about how many different legal chess matches are happening in this case right now. If those subpoenas come back and the cloud data doesn't match what was said on that island, what do you think should happen next? Drop your answer below. Comment truth if you think the digital evidence will change everything, or sealed if you think it gets buried before it ever reaches the public. The state autopsy is done. DA Angel Myers McIlrath confirmed on July 23rd that every piece of evidence, including those autopsy findings, is sealed until the grand jury has reviewed it. Meanwhile, the independent autopsy commissioned by Nolan's family, conducted by Dr. Roger Mitchell, ruled cause and manner of death undetermined. He also flagged that critical parts of Nolan's body, the trachea, the thyroid horn, the laryngeal cartilage, the hyoid bone, were never sent to him with the remains. So while cable news is debating a 5 p.m. fight that no one in law enforcement has confirmed, the family is waiting on sealed autopsy results, subpoenaed cloud data, and a grand jury that hasn't been convened yet. The mystery altercation may be real, or it may be exactly what most consider it to be, a smokescreen. In any case, what we know for certain is that the facts that matter most are still locked behind a courtroom door. What do you think is in those sealed autopsy files? And do you think this grand jury actually gets there? Drop it in the comments. And if you have been watching our full Nolan Wells series and you want to see what we uncovered before this episode, the link is right here. We are not done with this case, not even close.